This video is for ITP 115, Programming in Python, and I want to talk a little bit more about strings. So here we go. Let's say we have a string last name. That's the variable name. Notice the camel case with a capital N there in the middle. Last name equals Steinbeck in double quotes. Okay, so Steinbeck is the last name we're storing in this variable. This kind of variable is, it's actually an object. And objects can hold more than just the thing that you see. They have attributes, some data in there, and they also have functionality. There's things that they can do. So let's say we have the last name equals Steinbeck, and then we can print it. All right. This is the first time we've seen a variable in the print statement. Everything that we've printed before has quotes in this position. But now here's where we can use a variable. And this is the output of it over here. So when you say print last name, you get Steinbeck out. Now let's say we want to print last name dot upper. What is dot upper? Okay, so dot upper is it's a function, it's a method inside of the string class. So it's a thing that last name knows how to do. It's a thing that all strings know how to do. They know how to convert all their characters to uppercase, and then that's what this expression, last name dot upper, is replaced with. So you started with some mixed case, capital S, and the rest lowercase, and now last name dot upper turns out to be all uppercase. Now, one thing to note, it does not change the letters in the variable last name. Those are still in lowercase. It just delivers to us, to the print command, the uppercase version of it, but in between the print parentheses. So here's a whole list of string methods. This is things that strings know how to do. They know how to give you a version of themselves with all the letters converted to uppercase. They know how to give you one where all the letters are converted to lowercase. And this is useful when you're asking a user to input something, because sometimes users are sloppy. They put in uppercase, they put in lowercase, and then later you have to deal with it. And if it's, possibly different, then you have to deal with the possible differences. And the easiest thing sometimes is to just say, all right, we're going to convert whatever the user types to lowercase, and then that's what we're going to know that we have and use that. So there's also some functions here. Swap case, I pretty much don't know when I'd ever use that, but okay. Capitalize, make sure the first letter of something is capital. Could be useful for names. Capitalize the beginning of every word in something like you would for a title. Yeah, those could be useful. Oh, strip. String.strip. We use that all the time because users are sloppy about spaces at the end, sometimes spaces at the beginning of things. And so strip just takes off any spaces or tabs or enter or off of either end of a string, so that what you get is what you see, just the letters. And lastly, here we have a replace command. Okay, so the string is in S, and then we tell it to go find the occurrence of old, whatever variable is in old, whatever old says, go find that inside the string and change it into whatever's in this variable new. So this is getting complicated, but I'm sure we'll see some examples when we do live programming in class. So now we get to one of the most useful things. Well, it's impossible to have a program without it. It's input. So up until now, we've assigned variables with equal signs inside the program. But of course, a program is most useful when it can get information from outside to process. And so that is input to the program. And the input command always returns a string. Whatever you type, the letters, keyboard on the keyboard, that's a string. Even if you've typed numerals, it's a string. Okay, so here's an example. We say input with parentheses, and what the program, what Python will do is it will print out this question and then leave the cursor right there for the user to type in something. And when the user types that, that gets put into this variable name. And then you'll see in the example here, we print out hi, comma, and then whatever name you typed in, if Bob's running the program, Bob types in Bob, and then the program says, hi, Bob. We can do the same thing with numbers, but there's a catch. So here we say, please enter a number. Notice the input statement. So that prints out the question. User can type in, presumably a number, numerals, and they end up in num1 here. That's a variable name. We do the same thing. We get a string of numerals in num2, and then we say print, and we put those two together with a plus sign. Now, we saw this together in class last time, I think, where when you have two strings and you put a plus between them, it just glues them together. This is not addition of numbers. This is gluing strings together. So if here's the running program, you say, please enter a number, and you enter 3, and you say, please enter another number, then what you get is 3, 3. Now, if that's not what you want, I guess we got to do it a little differently. So input always reads in a string, and when you do a plus sign with strings, it just mashes them, concatenates them. So what you really probably want to do in this case is convert the string into an int or a float, depending on what kind of number you're asking for. And then we're going to add the two ints or the two floats together, and we'll get what we think of as a real number. So here's the code for that. We've got the input, please enter a number, but you'll notice that the string that comes back from that command, we don't store it yet. We then put it in this int. There's an int function, int with parentheses. And the thing inside the parentheses, that string, that numeral 3, is going to get turned into a number. Int turns it into a number. So in this case, num1 and num2, those are no longer strings with numeral 3 in them. Those are numbers. And when we add them together, you get, well, what you'd expect when you add numbers. 3 plus 3 is 6. So here's a look at the conversion functions. We just saw int, and if you put a string inside of here, this int function will convert it to an actual number. So here we go. You have a string, 1, 0, and now we're saying, let's turn that into an integer, and you get a number, which is an integer 10. We can also do it with floats. So if you want a number with a decimal point, a number that you could say add a half to, and then you'll get 10 and a half. Obviously, you can't do that with an integer. An integer can't ever be 10 and a half. So if you want to turn a string into a float, you just say float with parentheses, and then the thing you want to convert is inside there, inside those parentheses. And you can go the other way too. So here's a string function, abbreviated str, and it'll take x. In this case, x is probably a number, an integer variable, or a float, and it converts it into a string so that we could then print it out. We will use all these conversion functions a lot. Python is pretty forgiving about a lot of things, but it really likes to print strings. It doesn't print things besides strings. And if you want to do real arithmetic, you have to have numbers and not strings. So we end up using a lot of these to go back and forth to make sure we get what we want.